Welcome to the BTS Presents show.
I'm Brian Schulman, I'm the city's. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back. So Rabbi, basically you've worked in other communities and helped with homeless programs. How have other communities?
You mentioned that before. I'm new to the issue of homelessness when I came to Santa Cruz. First of all, when I was serving synagogues in various towns, we didn't have the homeless problem the way we have in the last 10, 15 years. So it's totally different.
Okay.
So my connection to homelessness is moving to Santa Cruz and seeing the incredible situation of fellow Americans sleeping on sidewalks because they didn't have a place to go, and families, etc. So it was the empathy that I felt, that we all feel, hopefully, for suffering, and saying this has got to stop, and we have to do something.
And we can.
And hopefully, with
there's some
new
money
city council
coming
people
in.
on the city council, hopefully there's going to be some change. But it's only going to happen if activists, say, look, we've got to find a reasonable place where people can reside securely, etc.
I think if we start down this path, it'll just open up. If we reopen a camp and start finding pocket places that are safe, have showers, safe for women especially, maybe even a separate portion of the camp for women. I think this is an important issue that isn't addressed. One of the reasons I did some volunteer work at the River Street camp, and one of the things that I picked up there was that they thought they could house more people, only they found that women wanted their own tent. And then I realized that, of course, you don't have to be with a person. You should have that availability. So they couldn't necessarily house all the people they thought they wanted to. But this says something in and of itself.
What was the total capacity at
I
the River
believe
camp?
they had 60-something tents, and they were hoping there would be multiple people in the tent, and they found out that many women, not all women, were preferring their own tent, and they could do it. And I think that is something we might need to address, that maybe we'll want to have an area within the camp for women possibly, or at least realize that that will be an option, that women may not want to shack up with the guy that they've been with.
And you're also talking about the issue of families.
And families also
family
need to have, right. I didn't see too many families at this, at the Ross camp. I didn't really see little kids. We had our own children we brought to show, our own families how other people are living, and for our children to understand, that we are grateful for what we have. Yeah. But I didn't see any children there.
I don't think the Ross camp is a family-friendly place.
Family-friendly, oh Lord, no.
No, it's
so
not a place where families would move in.
I would just say this. The immediate response that could happen that would make a huge difference between the tension that the tannery has and the camp right now is to move that camp off the levee. So our children and our families and our people who are uncomfortable right now, for real reason, because we've had verbal abuse, and one woman did have was physically.
But when you say move it,
move it back just for the time being until you open up the River Street camp.
Oh, yeah.
So move it back to where Ross is, the shopping center, Ross, that building that's there, and you put a fence there.
Oh, okay.
Because it's literally overflowed in such a way that it's hard to maneuver getting through.
You talked about running the gauntlet.
It's running the gauntlet. There's people all over, clear down to our path where we come around and walk to town. So we have to go around that and then go up and then through another gauntlet of a bunch of folks right at the top.
The levee's for everybody. I believe there's certain things that's for everybody, but in this particular case, not everybody will use it because they feel threatened, and actually have had cause to be threatened too.
And you said there was a little improvement in the vibe when you did this outreach in Fed, and you actually now you get some smiles and some recognition, but you see that as kind of a short-lived.
I don't see how it's going to last very long.
Yeah.
Not if they're still in the same situation they're in now.
It's terrible. They're living in the mud, and it's mid-30s. In California, you're not ready for this, and then now it's torrents of rain. This is hell.
But this has been going on in this town for a long time.
Well, it's time.
It's
and
time
the money is coming now. So that's what. And then I would say if they can't open up another camp, they're just stirring the pot and making things worse. They must open up another camp. They must have more than one, and you don't wait. You have to do it now. I mean, you can't wait for that money from the state to come in. Do this now, because these people every single day makes a difference. And in the meanwhile, you do need to pull that camp back and make it even with the shopping area. That they're going to close. They're going to put a fence up at the shopping area, so we won't be able to access our own shopping area there because they don't want people going into their parking lot.
Well,
that means I can't get to my shopping area. So, I mean, it's just all wrong.
No, it's a tough balance. It's a delicate balance, because on one hand, Santa Cruz is a sanctuary city, and on the other hand, there's limited budget, and the reality.
But when the police go in, and when you have people cleaning up for hours a day, this is adding up. When you have a police call or an ambulance call, and when you have to call any kind of services on an emergency level, you're really totaling up the bill. And if you just do something where you've thought about how to do a camp, and maybe it costs some money to do this, of course it does, but it doesn't cost anywhere near as much, I'll bet, as calling the cops all the time, having the ambulance there all the time, and just having people who are sick and have to go to the hospital because they're living like that. I mean, this is emergency money, and emergency, when you have an emergency, it costs really a lot of money. So if you add that up, compared with even $90,000, which I think is absorbent, of course, it's ridiculous, even that, I would wonder how much that camp actually really costs. That has nothing. That has nothing. If you add up police time, ambulances, services that are in there,
the bark they put down for the mud.
They did, well, so they could get the garbage out without being in the mud. It's like, it wasn't for people, it was for the services. And now they've contracted out the garbage. So even Parks and Rec isn't doing that. Now, once you contract, now you're talking even more money, right? So I would question that investment, whether this is not saving money.
So I guess coming back to the thesis of your book, applying empathy, applying courage, applying these things, how might you suggest that we as a community could actively become a part of a solution?
Well, it's being a conscientious electorate. It means that we're not just asking our political elected leaders, city council in this case, in the main, and the county board of supervisors, to take action. It means that we demand that they do something. And I have to say, the previous city council, I mean, we activists used to go to the council. One time I broke down crying in front of the council. I was talking about an 82-year-old homeless woman who came the meeting before and described what it's like to be homeless at 82 as a woman. And, here I'm practically in tears, and they're looking at me as if I'm some lunatic asking them to do something unheard of. The lack of political will on the part of some of our ex-city council people, and maybe a few current ones now, is mind-boggling. I just cannot understand the lack of empathy that some of them show for the homeless people in this town.
So how about other organizations such as advocacy groups,
Well,
churches? I know that there's
churches.
Historically, churches often.
I'm involved in a group called Conscience in Action with Huff, Robert Norris, and we're going to sponsor this Thursday a rally, and the police chief is going to speak about the whole issue of people having to sleep in their campers, which is another whole issue. So there are activist organizations in town that are trying to push the issue.
And churches? What are churches
And churches, and some churches.
Some churches. Can you
Right.
name the
Well,
churches?
Peace United, I think, is probably in Trinity and Hadesha Menu, Bethel, two of the synagogues.
How many
So
people are they? I mean, they allow basically nightly camps, and then they
They alternate different people into the social hall to sleep.
And are any of these funds going to be able to be granted to these organizations? Do you know how the funds could be allocated?
I think it's up in the air right now.
I don't think that money could, I'm not sure. But I don't think the churches are asking, I don't know. The sponsoring organization is the Santa Cruz Coalition on Interfaith Coalition on Homelessness that sponsors the shelter process. And so they would be the beneficiaries of any monies that would come.
So it seems we really, if we only have through end of February to figure this out, we need to figure out, to make the proposal, who the organizations would be that are eligible, who they should, I mean, obviously they should contact the city. And is it only coming to the city, not the county?
This is for the city. The county has their own funding that'll come in. My understanding that we get, I've heard, $8 to $10 million just for the city that's earmarked.
And that's for 2 years.
This is in 2 years, and it's coming fast, and the proposals have to be in right away. And there's not everybody's ready for proposing. You can't just go buy a building. Then all the money's gone. I mean, you have to actually be, you have to be careful with your money. I do know that they had it in the good times, and it looks like there's a serious interest in navigation sites, which other cities do. And they are effective.
And that's getting people to treatment or getting people
Yes,
to...
and they're effective that way. And ultimately, the stages of the ladder is for housing first. Okay, but to get there, you don't get a house. You have these steps, and one of the steps is like taking care of people who are sleeping in the mud right now. I mean, that you can provide a step up the ladder. Maybe it has a shower in the next level. You know, ultimately, maybe at some point we will want to have tiny houses. I don't know where people want to go, but you immediately don't jump in necessarily to a navigation center, although I do think that's where they're thinking of doing this. But I think I want them to be reminded through this show and through our activities that you need to address the immediate thing, which is people sleeping in the mud, outside, needing to have some basic facilities.
Balanced with the safety of the neighbors, you know, and
yeah.
you know, your right to quiet enjoyment of the public walkway, you know, a feeling of safety going from where you guys live.
Yeah, because we see a lot of, again, we see things going on that shouldn't be going on over there, things that we don't want our children to see.
Exposed to, yeah.
There was not, when was it? It was about a month ago, I guess. One of the guys was slumped over one of his carts. He overdosed on heroin. He wasn't dead. I mean, he just was slumped over his cart in our parking lot. Yeah. Which is only about 100 feet from where the camp is.
And that's a tough one to explain.
Overflow. We definitely get overflow in really a lot of ways. You know, we have people coming around screaming in the middle of the night. You know,
banging on windows.
You know, I mean, we have overflow and from people who do need help. Another purpose of having a decent camp that's supervised is that you can get some help.
Well, when you have you already approached some of our present city council people about this?
I will be going to Tuesday's meeting at 5:30 and being part of the community. When you get 2 minutes to speak as part of the community, and
well, you know, if you call the mayor's office first, you can get 5 minutes. So that's
I did not know that.
Yes, you can be.
But I want it on the agenda. Yeah,
right. So then you have to call, and if you call, you can get put on the agenda, and you don't just have to.
It's probably too late for this agenda.
Well, no, it's not.
And
You can call Monday,
I think this
probably.
agenda is more about the Measure M redux, you know, having to do with rent control. Yeah, I really see homelessness as and safety of residents as a separate issue. I don't think, I mean, there's not enough time in a night to talk about both issues. I think they should be talked about separately.
Well, this is what I'd like to see. I would like to see them to put it on the agenda so that people can actually talk to it more than 2 minutes or 5 minutes, right? And actually they can talk with each other about this. And then I'd like to see a town hall meeting at the Civic Center.
And have you talked to Andy Mills in terms of the safety issues of the
Yeah,
encampment?
we went and met with him.
And what was his response as far as dealing with the drug issues, the bicycle thefts, those kinds of things?
He acknowledges that it's definitely happening and that he's called. He's one of the groups that are sending people there. It's because you need to have, if you're not given a place to sleep, you can sleep on any public property. And it's better to have people in a place. Not that place though. That place is not prepared for this. Right. So we have people. That's the new way. And so he does not give out tickets for camping because there's no such thing anymore. Right. However, but he responds and he's saying that people need to be active and that we need to pressure as a community citizens to go forward with this and all that. That's why I'm here.
And hopefully you can lobby to be on, I assume there's going to be a task force. And
I'd hope there would be.
It seems like you'd be either one of you would be good candidates for that since you're
year,
right on the front lines.
One thing you just said though was you can't, you have to look at them as separate issues, this public safety and
homelessness?
The homelessness also, because
it isn't separate, actually.
They're separate.
I was saying rent control and homelessness are different. Those are different issues.
Yeah,
it's the homeless problem that has caused this public safety issue for us, because they were put there.
Right.
Last year, Conscience and Action and Huff proposed 3 times before council that they appoint a task force on homelessness that would involve activists, homeless people, Parks and Rec, etc. They refused.
No response.
Well,
and how about the current council? Are they open to that?
We don't know yet.
Yeah, I think Drew Glover is. Because we've been meeting with him. We've been meeting with whomever we could.
I think there's a majority, hopefully of 4 now that will.
Well, they seem focused on rent control, and when you look at communities like San Francisco, obviously that really hasn't worked because they have just as bad a homeless issue as we do. So really, I think the council needs to be educated to say, look, we need homelessness addressed, period, and safety addressed, period, full stop. Everyone can argue till they're blue in the face about rent control, subsidized housing, any of those other possibilities, but we have, we need triage right now.
Right. We need,
and I think a task force to figure out, can 90,000 be spent more wisely than it was?
And we also need to just move forward without even a task force. We need to, we already have a camp almost ready. They tore it down, but they graded it. They put in facilities. It's almost ready. You need a little, dinking around and it'll be ready. And it can be done like that. That's what I think. And that, don't worry about the money at the moment. I think you can actually cut it way back and start there. Get your task force. Do this. But in the meanwhile, you actually have to do something. And I think you can do something. And it wasn't just the city who paid for that. I understand there were some religious community groups that helped pay for that camp too.
Right. The The coalition. I
Yeah,
think.
and help pay for. So
Yeah,
it's not the city did, and they overdid that. But I think
And
even
Salvation Army, by the way, has been
there you
helpful in
go,
this.
and they already provide for people. So it wasn't just the city who's complaining about the bill. Other people were helping with that, and I know Chief Mills feels that that was overkill, but they were trying it out, and I think that he would be in support of doing something like that without necessarily the round-the-clock police, literally right there in a trailer.
And you know, we could probably move them over there next week.
And you would both feel much safer if that were done.
It was successful.
It
It was a successful camp. 0 complaints, according to Chief Mills.
So I guess taking this conversation full circle back to the guy who wrote the book on applying compassion. Well, I think compassion is a key ingredient in this, and I think that's one thing that came to light in this connection between the food and the actually connecting and getting some smiles. I think building on that, and the book touches on that, and that's a historic. If you go back to, I was raised in the Sikh tradition, and free kitchen, where everybody could sit side by side, whether you were a noble, whether you were a servant. You look at the Thanksgiving tradition. It's a very visceral, nourishing concept, and I think how would you, having been a rabbi for most of your life, how would you minister to people that they could apply a sense of compassion while also being safe, being sensible, and helping solve the issue? How would you recommend somebody apply that here?
To our political leaders or to homeless people?
Both. Where would you think it would be most productive?
Well, I think
In 2 minutes or less. I'm kidding.
In terms of
You get at least 5 here.
getting our elected officials to show empathy, moral courage, and kindness to the homeless people that live in our town.
If we could just get a few of them to move into a homeless camp for a week, the homeless problem would be over.
Like trading places.
Yes.
They would
Part
just
two.
go walk through it.
think-
They would understand better.
I think they know.
I don't think they really know. I know that it's people who complain that when you drive into Santa Cruz and you see these flapping tents, as a tourist, you might just want to turn around.
But
It's business.
they've gone by. They've seen that too.
Of course, they have. They should walk.
Don Lane, when he was the mayor, did a 10-minute wonderful video presentation. I think it was about homelessness, and his fellow city council people saw, etc. It's the lack of moral courage on their part to decide, yes, we feel empathy for these people and we are going to do something.
So empathy backed with courage.
Empathy and moral courage. And kindness,
Yeah.
which are definitely chapters in my book. But chapters on pages of a book are not chapters in the hearts of human beings whom we elect. We need to help them paginate themselves in terms of values, etc. And I personally think that some of them, definitely on the city council now, have empathy for the situation. I think there's a fairly good chance, if the community demands action, that they will act.
I think that timing is right now.
Yes, the timing is
Timing is right now. There's some funds coming in, and we have some young people on the city council, younger people,
Well, we have-
and I think that counts.
For
You
sure.
know, and who are closer to this issue than we've had people be this close.
Well, and if you could bring one historic figure back to life out of your book, who would you call for this one?
On this issue?
Yeah.
That's an interesting question.
Would it be Roosevelt? Would it be?
Yeah,
Mother
it
Teresa?
might be Roosevelt and Gandhi. Oh, and Martin Luther King is in my book. So I think M.L. King, Gandhi, Teddy Roosevelt was definitely a progressive
But somebody with guts.
person. Yeah.
Somebody with guts.
And T.R. had guts.
Well, I commend the three of you for having the guts enough to speak openly about this, and I think that's one of the things we pride ourselves on our program or at least we strive for. These issues are going to continue, and if any one person can come up with a really good idea, it just takes one, and then obviously the empathy and the courage to come forth with it. So thank each of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll keep discussing until we come up with a solution.
Thanks for watching the BTS Presents Show. Thanks for watching the BTS Presents Show.
Hi, I'm Rochelle Roundtree, and I'm the store manager for Habitat for Humanity Restore in Santa Cruz.
Right off Swift Street there in Santa Cruz, you'll find the Restore warehouse for stuff that's new and
We are currently building affordable homes in the community, and the profits from the Restore go directly to help with those building programs.
we got refrigerators and we got sinks, enough lumber and flooring to make a skating
At the
rink.
Restore, we're always accepting items that are excellent condition, including furniture, building material, garden supplies, household items. If you donate, you get a 15% discount.
We got cabinets and we got doors, another warehouse full of windows, and a whole lot more. So if you're doing some plumbing, we got your drain and all the tools to keep your house maintained. And we don't have puppies and we don't have frogs, but we got a wood stove that'll burn your logs. So come on down, walk around and stare. You're bound to find a lamp, a table, or that perfect chair.
All the funds that we raise goes towards building houses for people who otherwise couldn't afford a house.
Now if you want to donate,
It's educating the community about where their money's going.
lend a hand or polish a mirror, you can call us at 824-4704. You'll make the tax man cry and we'll even come to your door. We're on Swift Street,
Tuesday through Sunday from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. Our telephone number is area code 831-824-4704.